Welcome back, where I promise you we do a little more challenging things. So, where we've been practicing all of this math, we're going to continue to practice right there. And let me offer you a problem that is a little more difficult. So underneath the 0.7, let's go ahead and write this problem. Please write 0.32 times 51. Again, I'll say the numbers. 0.32 times 51. I'm going to be taking a look at that problem, and I know right now that the longer one is on top because it has 3 digits, and the other one has 2 digits. So I've done the first step. The second step is to draw a decimal box. So I will draw the decimal box, and then I'll need to be counting the place values that come after the decimal. So there are 2 place values that come after the decimal in the first number, and 0 in the second one. So it will be a 2. I write a 2 in the decimal box. I'm also going to make sure that my decimal box is colored blue. And now I'm looking at this problem and I think, okay, I can do this. I look for zeros. The 0 is out in front and it's a runt, so I cross it out. And there's not any other zeros, so I then just continue on with the multiplication. So I do 32 times 51. 1 times 2 is 2, and 1 times 3 is 3. So that one was pretty easy. But now I'm moving on. This is a double by double, which means I have to use my previous knowledge to place a 0 for place value and move on to the next line. So I place a 0 for place value underneath the 2, and I scratch out the 1 because I'm done with it. Once I have done that, I'm ready to move on into the tens place. Now I'm doing 5 times 2 and then 5 times 3. Well, 5 times 2 is 10. So I put the 0 down under the 3, and I have to carry the 1. And then I do 5 times 3, which is 15, but I have to add the baby one, which is 16. So I got an answer here that has 2 partial products. It has a 32 and a 1,600. What do I do to partial products? I add them together. After I've added them together is when I'm going to deal with my decimal box. So very simply, when you add these problems together, you should get 1,632. Well, that cannot possibly be a piece of 51. Remember, a .32 means a piece of 51. That is a huge number, 1,632. So I use my decimal box. I'm going to make sure that you for sure, that you draw the arrow. This time it just comes down longer. And I move the decimal 2 places, which means I would put it in between the 3 and the 6. So could 16.32 be a piece of 51? Yes, it could. So I'm going to be circling it in green. Make sure that it doesn't look messy. If yours looks messy, then you need to rewrite it. So it was a little more challenging. Could you name why it was challenging? Hopefully you noticed that it was because it was a double by double, meaning I had to come and use my other multiplication skills where I know to place a 0 for place value and get 2 different partial products. That's why it was a little more challenging. I hope it wasn't too awful for you. You should be able to handle that pretty well. The next thing we're going to do here is we are going to be writing our own story problem. We don't usually do this. Oftentimes we just use the workbook to do this. So this is a little hard with the video, but what we'll do is I'll just be silent for a little while I write out the story problem, and then you need to make sure that you are writing it out as well. The story problem says, James sold bottles of water for 75 cents per bottle. Luckily, that's not $75. I'll read it again. James sold bottles of water for 75 cents per bottle. He sold 43 bottles. How much money did he earn? When you see the words like each or per bottle, per means you're going to be doing some multiplication. So if he sells 43 bottles and they each cost 75 cents, you're going to multiply those together. When you go to stack this up, be smart about it and stack up the one that is longer on top. Is 0.75 longer or 43? 0.75 is longer. I would leave off the dollar sign until you get to write your final answer and then think through when I'm answering. If it's money, I should throw a dollar sign in there. So leave it off for now, but write the 0.75 on top and then multiply it by 43. The longer one is already on top, so I need to now draw a decimal box and color it blue. I should say outline it in blue. The number that goes in that decimal box is 2 because there are two place values after the decimal in 0.75, and there's not any in the 43. Are there any zeros I need to check for? There are. There's one out in front, so you cross it out. It's a runt if it's in front. So now I'm just doing 75 times 43. Why don't you do your own math here? Remember, it's a double by double, so you're going to be having to get two partial products and use a 0 for place value. Let's see if we get the same answer. Did you get these same partial products? The partial products I got are 225 and 3,000. So I add the partial products together. And I deal with the decimal box. There's no way the answer is in the 3,000s. There's no way that he sold 43 bottles of water and made $3,000. I wish. So use the decimal box, draw the arrow, and move it 2 times. To move it 2 times, you'd go out in front of the 5, and then out in front of the 2. So really it becomes smashed in between the 2 2's. And that's my final answer, 32.25, but it's a story problem, so I would write this in a complete sentence. I'm going to write it over here to the right above the hole, and I'm going to use the details that I can. I'm going to say his name, which is James, and then I know that it says how much money did he earn, so it's got to go in money. So I'm going to say James earned $32.25. I'm going to make sure to put a dollar sign on that. And then I'm going to write by selling water. Actually, I'm going to say by selling water bottles. I'm just going to box that problem off by going straight down. So my answer says James earned $32.25 by selling water bottles. Okay, the last thing I want to do before we turn to our workbook, that's right, our workbook, is right here in the bottom left. I've got a little more space. On your homework assignment, it talks to you about this, solving it using mental math, which is pretty easy, especially when you know that anything times 1 is itself. So write this number and only write it in a sentence from left to right. So you're going to have to come clear over here on the left. And the number is 2,194. And we're going to multiply that by 100th, which looks like times 0.01. And then it just has an answer line. So they want us to solve this using mental math, which just means you already know what a number times 1 is, but write a little mm. We're going to write it in blue. It just means I get to solve this using mental math. I know that anything times 1 is just that number, so I know there's going to be a 2194. So I write that on the line, 2194. But what they want you to practice here is that you still know that there is a decimal box. So draw the decimal box and put the number that goes in it. The 2194 didn't have any, and the 0.01, there are 2 place values after that decimal. So that decimal box deserves a 2 in it. And then I'm just going to draw the arrow over, just like we did above on the top of this page. You draw the arrow over to the end of the answer, and I move the decimal 2 places, which puts it in between the 9 and the 1. So my final answer is 21.94. Ooh, I really need to make sure that that decimal stands out. That one is mental math because you're just timesing a number by 1, only recognizing that you're moving the decimal. So they're going to have a couple problems like that for you on your homework, so don't be confused by it. Just know that, oh yeah, I can do this. I can times anything by 1 and then move decimals. It's pretty basic. I know you can do it. The next thing I need you to do is to find in your workbook, page 165. Looks like this. And it says, shifts when both factors are decimals. It does say continued. We're not going to be doing all of the problems for lesson 7. We're not even going to be doing all the problems on this page, but please go find page 165 and get it ripped out and push pause on the video until you are ready. Okay, the first part, number 35, it talks a lot about how if you're having a hard time knowing that numbers are shifting or decimals are moving, you can go through this process of saying 2/10 times 4/10 is the same as pulling out the 2 and timesing it by the place value, which would be the tenths. Okay, and then, excuse me, I think that might be the first time I've ever sneezed in a math journal video. Ah, luckies. Okay, sorry about that. So this is just kind of explaining that you can pull the digits out of the place value and multiply them together to get your answer. To be quite honest, it's just a lot easier to multiply the normal numbers and then move the decimal. Okay, it's just like taking a piece of it, or a tenth, or 100th, or 1,000th. You're just moving the numbers or moving the decimal to reflect how small the pieces actually are. So that's kind of what's happening all through page 165. So I just kind of want to go to 36, 37, 38, 39, and we're going to solve these really quickly. So pay close attention, okay? You know that 36, 37, 38, and 39 are all saying 2 times 4. They're just in different place values. So guess what the answer is going to be on all of them? There's going to be an 8 because 2 times 4 is 8. So I'm going to put 8s on all of those lines. And then all I'm going to do is count place values for decimals. So I'm not even going to draw a decimal box. I'm just going to count the place values for decimals. So let's come over here to 36. There's 1 in the 2 and there's 1 in the 0.4. So I'm just going to write those numbers above it. There's 1 there and 1 there. And by 1, I mean there's 1 place after the decimal. 1 place after the decimal. So 1 and 1 make 2. So when I come over to the 8, my decimal is at the end every time. So it's got to move over 2 places. So if it's at the end of 8, it moves over twice. So it would give, I'd have to fly in 0 the hero so that it could sit right in front of the 0.08. And I'd put a 0 in front of that as well. So take a look at 37. There's 1 decimal place above the 0.2, and there's 2 decimal places above the 0.04. So how many times are you really going to be moving this? 3 times. So I'm actually going to erase my 8 because there's going to be a lot of zeros in front of it. In fact, I think we should go change all of our 8s to be at the end. So back to 37. It has a 3 decimal movement, and I only have 1 digit. So I know I'm going to need 2 zeros to be able to move it 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And I always just throw 1 out in front. Number 38. This one doesn't have any, and that one only has 1. So I only have to move it once. So it becomes 0.8. And this one, there's a 2 on number 39. There's 2 decimal places above the 0.2 and 1 decimal place above the 0.4. So I'm going to be moving it 3 times again. So it would look like this. If you're moving it 3 times, you got to fly in some zeros to help you. So don't forget about that. Flying in zeros is going to be really, really helpful. Okay, I think you know how to do that pretty well. I would love to try number 43 just to double check. So these ones are stacked up for us. So the first thing we do is we go, oh no, the longer one is not on top. However, after you cross out zeros, please just go ahead and cross out the zeros because they're all going to end up being in front. After you cross out zeros, aren't they both just 1 digit? Yeah, so I don't need to rewrite it, but I do need a decimal box. The number that goes in that decimal box is a 3. Do you think you could tell me why? It's because there was 1 place in the 0.4 and 2 places in the 0.06. So now I just do 4 times 6, which is 24. And then I move the decimal box, the arrow down. Move it 3 places. So to move it once, it would be in between the 4 and 2. To move it twice, it'd be in front of the 2. So I need a 0 in order to move it 3 times. So I put a 0 at the front. And I can place the 0 now the decimal in front of that 0. And I just want to double check that it is in the right place. So come back here to the 4. If I move it 3 times, it would be 0.024. Final answer. Go ahead and circle it in green. Great. Let's try number 45. We're jumping around. Number 45. The longer one's on top. I'll do a decimal box. The number that goes in that decimal box is a 2. So make it blue and write a 2 in it. And then you'll also get to cross out the 0 that's in front in the 0.13. Now I do normal multiplication. 13 times 2 is 26. If you didn't know that, you could go each step at a time. But I'm taking a piece of 2, so it can't be 26. So I use the decimal box, draw the arrow, all the way down to the answer line. And move it 2 times. You should get the answer of 0.26. Circle it in green. Those are all the problems that we're going to do on this page. But go ahead and turn the page to page 166. A lot more types of problems are happening. We're just practicing our multiplication skills. So we are going to do number 58. Is the longer number on top? No, it is not. So I need to rewrite this problem. So I'm going to put a big RW above it. And I'm going to probably write that in green. So I rewrite it. I put the 0.26 on top times 0.2. Now the problem is rewritten. I check for a decimal box. Yep, it's going to need one, so I draw it and make it blue. And I check for what number is going to go in that decimal box. You should know this by now. The number that goes in there is a 3 because there's 2 on the top and 1 on bottom. Now I check for zeros. There are 2 zeros and they're both out in front. They are both runt, so they get crossed out. So now I just do 26 times 2 and then move the decimal. Make sure you've drawn that arrow all the way down to the answer line and think through it. Okay, there's only 2 digits and I have to move it 3 times. Oh, I'm going to need a 0 the hero. I'm going to fly at least 1 in right now. Remember, you can fly in as many as you want. I move it 3 times. It sits out here in the front of 0. So technically I need another 0 there. And the answer circled in green is 0.052. Okay, that is the last one that we're going to just practice. Now we're going to take a look at these story problems. I want to solve 2 of these story problems. And I think I would like to do number 60 first. Benjamin bought 6.2 pounds of rice. Will you, in green, circle 6.2 pounds? Each pound cost 0.90. Will you please circle 0.90? How much did he spend on rice? Will you take your blue and underline the word each? That means we're doing multiplication. So when I set this up, I'm doing 6.2 and I'm doing 0.90. 6.2, 0.90. Well, which one of those has the longer digits? 6.2 or 0.90? 0.90. So I write that one on top and I times it by 6.2. Remember, we are going to we're going to leave the $sign off until later. So I've now written 0.90 times 6.2. I put a decimal box. The number that goes in that decimal box is 3. I get to deal with zeros now. Is there a 0 in front that we can cross out as a runt? Yes, it's in front of it's the 0.9. So I can cross out the first 0. But then that last 0 in 90, that one's at the end. So it gets to stay and be a friend. So I scribble it out and I write the 0 down in my answer line. And now I solve the problem. Well, the problem is 9 times 62 now. So guess what? We have a problem. The longer one is no longer on top. Because we got rid of a 0 in the front and we dropped one down as our friend, this needs to be rewritten. Isn't that crazy? You can get this far and still have to rewrite the problem. It's the coolest. So you have to flip it because 6.2 is the longer one. So you put the 6.2 on top and you times it by 0.90. So all that work you just did, you're just going to quickly rewrite it. You know the 0 in front gets like that. You know one of this 0 gets brought down. And I color it, or I scribble it out green. Now I can do the normal multiplication because now it says 6.2 times 0.9 or 62 times 9. It's a lot easier. 9 times 2 is 18, so you drop the 8 and carry the 1. And then 9 times 6 is 54, plus a 1 would be 55. And then I move the decimal, so draw the arrow down into my answer line. And move it 3 places. 1 place would be in front of the 0, 2 places is in front of the 8, 3 places is in between the 2 5s. So my answer is 5.580. But the question is, how much did he spend on rice? It has to deal with money. So if I'm dealing with money, do I leave this 0 at the end? No, I can't leave it at the end. That wouldn't make sense. So I'm just going to move it into my answer line, but I'll leave that last 0 off because having 58 cents is the same as having 580 tenths of a penny. I know that's a little confusing, but if you're dealing with money and there's just a 0 at the very, very end, you just leave it off and you just say it's $5.58. So go ahead and write the problem. Benjamin spent $5.58 on rice. And lastly, I want you to solve number 63 all on your own. And then you're going to make sure your name and number is on both sides of this paper. And you're going to turn this paper into the math basket. So one more time, you are going to solve number 63. So I'm boxing it and I'm putting a star by it. You are going to solve number 63. And then you're going to make sure your name and number are on both sides of this paper. And then what are you going to do with this paper? You're going to turn it into the math basket. When you are finished with that, you can pull out your homework and remembering and complete all of the homework side and all of the remembering side. On the stretch your thinking, it's super easy because it just talks about placing decimals, but I'm not going to make you do it like normal. Enjoy. Thanks for joining. Catch you next time.